Yeah, hello. My name is Robert Perkins. You can call me Bob Perkins. I've lived in Hampton Falls all my life, a total of 84 plus years. And I intend to live here the rest of my life and die here, I hope. The population of Hampton Falls, when I was born in 1928, I seem to recall it being 491. And I knew, growing up here, I knew most of the residents of Hampton Falls. Most of the residents had their own farms. They maintained a cow or a horse, sometimes more, and sold milk and raised some agriculture. Hampton Falls had one store in Hampton Falls when I was growing up. I'll take that back, maybe two stores. There was one near my house that operated for a while on Route 84, and then there was Merrill's store on Lafayette Road. Well, Hampton Falls today is so much different from when I was growing up. When I was growing up, even some homes had no electricity, no bathrooms, no running water. Well, growing up, there were not too many children in the neighborhood, but when we did get together occasionally for games and birthday parties. Then later on, as I got a little older, my uncle purchased bicycles for the whole family, and we were on cloud nine. We were able to go around the whole town, visiting people and doing like fishing, rafting, and things, outdoor sports that kids love. I went to school here in Hampton Falls. It was then known as the East School, and it was the two-room schoolhouse that has since burned down. We had 3 grades to a room with one teacher for each room. The teacher did the music, the art, and all sorts of things. Occasionally, the teacher would ask an older student to supervise another class, maybe to help them be quiet or read something to them. There were 3 grades, but the classes were small. I only had 6 in my class going through the first 6 grades. I have always lived in the house on Kensington Road in Hampton Falls. This house was purchased by my grandfather in the late 1800s, I believe. And my grandfather lived there, and then my grandmother lived there. She maintained 2 rooms in the house, and when my father got married, he and his wife lived in one half of the house, and that's where the five children, including my brother and 3 sisters, who were raised in that house. The house was originally moved from Kensington at the end of Route 84. In 1897, I believe my aunt told me, and it was moved with the help of oxen. And she said the house ran into difficulty being moved during the winter, so it sat in the field, Nason's field, all winter. And then in the spring, they started moving it again. My ancestors, grandfather and great-grandfather on my father's side, and even further back, have always lived in Hampton Falls. My mother's side of the family grew up in Hampton, and she could trace back her ancestry to the original settlers of Hampton. And when I was growing up, it was surrounded by fields and cultivated fields. And in fact, Mr. Thurlow, who lived next door, ran a farm. He grew vegetables, fruit trees, and raised 7 children through that simple farm that he ran. For the future, I hope the next generation will be able to enjoy the wide open spaces and the salt marshes that Hampton Falls has. Thankfully, zoning has solved some of the issues, but not all. Over the years, you can see that what's happened to the salt marshes. Growing up, they were still popular by farmers for their hay, and they cut the hay. But through changes over the years, the marshes became wasteland, and nobody wanted them. In fact, they gave them to the town for taxes. My family owned a lot of marshland. We just gave it to the Fish and Game Society to maintain for the public's use. And hopefully, in the future, I hope the marsh will stay open forever and not be filled in. The Boston and Maine ran train service from Portsmouth to Boston while I was growing up and while I was working. And my first job and going to school in Boston, I took the train from Hampton to Boston. In those days, it did not stop at Hampton Falls. The Hampton Falls Depot had been removed, but it did stop at Seabrook and Atlantic Station in Seabrook and Salisbury. And the old steam engine was great. There probably were a dozen trains back and forth between Portsmouth and Boston. Well, during World War II, I was still in high school, and we did endure rationing of food and gasoline and coffee, and most everything was rationed. We did have alerts for aircraft, but nothing ever happened. We were forced to pull our shades on the east side of all the houses. No outside lights during the war. We had to paint the top half of the automobile headlights to reduce the glare. And other than that, World War II didn't affect Hampton Falls too much, except the people who were called to go into service. And quite a few did go in. I know my sister was engaged to one of the men that was lost his life in the accident in training, and that was hard on the family. I can recall many big snowstorms we had growing up. As kids, we certainly enjoyed playing in the snow. I do remember the biggest snowstorm that I can remember came in late November. I was still in high school. And it started out as a rainstorm and turned to snow. And the next morning, all the roads in Hampton Falls and around were completely blocked. The ordinary snowplows couldn't take care of it. So we got out the town tractor plow. I don't think it is still in existence. And were able to finally clear some of the roads, because the drifts were enormous, and it was several days before some roads were plowed. Today, the roads are plowed every hour, but in those days, the roads were not plowed until the snow stopped falling.